21 years old. I stayed alone in my uncle and aunt's apartment for almost 2 weeks. The apartment building was old, quiet, and strangely empty at night. Behind the building, there was a dark pond that nobody ever went near after midnight. Even the security guards avoided looking at the water for too long. One rainy summer night, I was sitting alone in the living room watching TV. My uncle and aunt were out of the country for business, so the whole apartment was silent. Around 12 a.m., I suddenly heard a loud splash coming from the pond outside. At first, I thought maybe a dog or cat had fallen into the water. A few seconds later, I heard another splash, but this time it sounded heavier. I lowered the TV volume and walked toward the balcony slowly. The entire area outside was completely dark, except for the black water in the pond. Then I heard someone humming softly from outside. The sound didn't feel human at all. I looked carefully toward the pond and froze immediately. A man was standing waist deep inside the water, staring directly at my balcony. His face was too dark to see clearly, but I knew he was looking at me. Quickly closed the balcony door and locked every window in the apartment. My hands were shaking while I tried calling the security guard downstairs, but my phone suddenly showed no signal. Right after that, I heard 3 knocks on the balcony glass behind me. I slowly turned around, terrified to look outside. Wet handprints were sliding down the glass from the other side. Then a deep voice whispered, "Why did you close the door?" At that moment, all the lights inside the apartment suddenly went out. The apartment became completely silent after the lights went out. I could hear water dripping somewhere inside the kitchen. I grabbed my phone flashlight and slowly walked toward the sound. The floor was wet, as if someone had just walked through the apartment. Then I noticed barefoot footprints leading toward my bedroom. Every footprint was filled with dirty pond water. Suddenly I heard my bedroom door creak open by itself. Something inside the dark room started breathing heavily. I wanted to run outside, but the apartment door wouldn't open at all. It felt like someone was holding the door shut from the other side. Then I heard wet footsteps coming closer behind me, slowly, step by step, across the living room floor. I turned my flashlight around, but nobody was there. The footsteps suddenly stopped right behind me. Then a freezing, cold hand touched my shoulder softly. I screamed and dropped my phone onto the floor. When I picked up the phone again, the flashlight pointed toward the balcony. The wet man was standing inside the apartment now. Water was dripping from his body onto the floor slowly. His eyes looked completely black and empty. He raised one finger toward the pond outside and smiled. Then he whispered, "There's someone else still inside the water." Right after he said that, another face slowly appeared from the pond below. That was the moment I realized I was never alone that night. The creature suddenly started walking toward me, very slowly. Every step made a wet, dragging sound across the floor. I backed away until my back touched the kitchen counter. The apartment smelled like dirty pond water and rotten mud. Then all the kitchen cabinets began opening one by themselves. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds echoed through the apartment. I looked back at the creature and saw its mouth stretching unnaturally wide. Inside its mouth, dark water was slowly pouring out onto the floor. Suddenly, my phone started ringing inside my pocket. The caller ID showed my uncle's number. With shaking hands, I answered the call immediately, but instead of my uncle's voice, I heard loud splashing water. Then, someone whispered my name from the other side slowly. Right after that, the call disconnected by itself. At the same moment, the TV turned on automatically in the living room. The screen showed live footage of the dark pond outside the apartment. In the middle of the TV screen, I saw a person standing in the pond again. But this time, the figure looked exactly like me, same face, same clothes, even the same phone in his hand. The copy of me slowly looked up toward the camera and smiled. Then it raised one hand and pointed directly behind me. My heart nearly stopped as I turned around slowly. The wet creature was now standing inches away from my face. And in a broken whisper it said, "You should have never looked into the pond." My little sister had two dogs named Bruno and Shadow. Every night I used to take them outside for a walk near our apartment. Behind our apartment there was an old dark pond. At night the whole place felt cold and lifeless. People in the building avoided that area after midnight. My father always warned me not to stay there too long, but I never believed the creepy stories about the pond. Nothing strange had ever happened before that night. The dogs suddenly started acting nervous and quiet, and that was when everything changed forever. It was around 1 in the morning when I took them outside. The apartment parking lot was completely empty. Usually Bruno and Shadow ran around excitedly, but that night they only stared toward the pond. A thick fog covered the water and the trees nearby. Shadow started growling softly under his breath. Bruno slowly stepped backward beside me. I thought maybe they saw another animal nearby. Then I noticed a tall, dark figure standing across the pond. The figure looked unnaturally tall in the darkness. Its arms seemed longer than a normal person's. Neither of the dogs would stop growling. My chest started pounding harder every second. I quickly turned on my phone flashlight. The moment the light touched the figure, it vanished. It disappeared like it had never been there. For a few seconds, everything became silent again. Then the water in the pond suddenly started moving. I grabbed both dogs and started walking back quickly. Suddenly, I heard splashing sounds behind me. The noises were getting closer every second. I was too scared to turn around. Then Bruno barked loudly at something behind us. I finally looked back toward the pond. The shadow figure was now standing in the middle of the water. This time, I could see glowing red eyes. Shadow started shaking in fear beside me. That was when I knew we were being followed. I started running toward the apartment gate. Both dogs ran beside me in panic. Suddenly, every light outside shut off. The entire area became pitch black. I could only hear the dogs breathing heavily. Then I felt cold air near my ear. It felt like someone was standing right beside me. Bruno suddenly stopped and barked into the darkness. Shadow hid close against my legs. Then all the lights came back on again. When the lights returned, I looked down at the ground. Wet footprints were slowly appearing on the pavement, but there was nobody there. The footprints were moving toward us. Shadow started whining in fear. I dragged both dogs toward the elevator entrance. The elevator was taking forever to arrive. Behind us, I could still hear dripping water. I knew something was getting closer. Then, the elevator doors slowly opened. We rushed inside the elevator immediately. I pressed the close button over and over again. Just before the doors shut, I saw a black hand appear. The hand stayed between the doors for a second. Bruno barked like crazy at it. Shadow curled up against the wall, trembling. Then the hand suddenly disappeared. The elevator started moving upward, but the floor numbers were completely gone. Only a small red light was blinking. When we reached our floor, I knocked hard on the door. My father opened it immediately. I told him everything while trying to catch my breath. At first, he didn't believe me, but the dogs looked completely terrified. Both of them kept staring at the hallway behind me. My father slowly looked out the apartment window. Then his face suddenly turned pale. He quickly closed the curtain again, but he refused to tell me what he saw. A few minutes later, my father finally spoke. He said there was someone standing near the pond. I slowly walked toward the window again. When I looked outside, my entire body froze. The dark figure was still standing there, motionless. Its glowing eyes were pointed directly at our apartment. Bruno suddenly started barking at the front door. Shadow hid underneath the dining table, shaking badly. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment. Someone was knocking from outside the door. A few minutes later, my father finally spoke. He said there was someone standing near the pond. I slowly walked toward the window again. When I looked outside, my entire body froze. The dark figure was still standing there, motionless. Its glowing eyes were pointed directly at our apartment. Bruno suddenly started barking at the front door. Shadow hid underneath the dining table, shaking badly. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment. Someone was knocking from outside the door.